We're now approaching completion of our project. The next part to complete is the pinwheel. To do this, we need to come out of the padding. So we cancel off our padding and jump into our Geneva Wheel sketch, which is part of the padding. We can see this is all complete now. So our lock wheel will actually sit here, and surrounding it will be the pinwheel. So let's jump to our lock wheel. And what I want to do is make the Geneva Wheel, the actual Maltese cross, visible itself. So we go right click on the Geneva Wheel and toggle visibility. We can see these are sitting together with each other now. First thing I'm going to do is actually hide some of these constraints on the screen so we can see what we're doing. Let's put down to constraints and we'll just make those invisible. Now we've got a nice clean model on the screen. We can see our guides behind, our lock wheel and our Geneva wheel. So now I'm going to create a new sketch and make the pinwheel. And I'm going to exit the sketcher. Now the lock wheel has become invisible again, so I'm going to right click. I'm going to click on there, go to my model and look at visibility and set that one to true. Jump back into the part designer, and I am going to make sure that I'm actually within the body. Click on the body, there we go, click on the body and then create sketch. And this is what I'm looking for. So XY plane and click OK. So now we've got a new sketch going. You can see down here sketch 003. And I am going to rename this as pinwheel. And I'm going to create a circle on here. Now my circle's got to be 200mm wide, which was the same size as the Geneva Wheel or Maltese cross. For the time being, I'm calling this the Maltese cross. So create our circle, and then click on the circle and go to constrain an arc or a circle. And we can change the radius of this to 200mm. And I'm going to pull this over to the center, or close to the center, and I'm going to click on the create an edge link to external geometry, and I'm going to bring in the side of my triangle that you see here, my guide triangle. So I'm going to bring this in, and that will bring in this point that I can constrain this geometry to. Hit escape. We'll just move our circle into place, click on the 2 points, making sure 2 vertices are selected here, and hit the constraint point tool here. So that's constrained to the center, and now we've got the circle sitting there. So this is part of our pinwheel. Now if we jump back to the instructions, see our pinwheel sitting here. And we've moved down to around about, I think it's step 10. You can actually see where we're placing the actual pin itself, because the pin has got to sit inside here, and we've been making all the sizes of our holes exactly the same. All our sizes of our holes are the same, and our pin will be the same as well, so it will actually sit inside this slot here. So we'll do that now, and we'll create a circle, and we'll set the constraint on the radius and 20mm. So that looks about right. So that will sit in here, and that's got to be right on the edge of the pin wheel we've added. So we look back at our instructions, we can see that this sits on the actual edge of this pinwheel. This pinwheel will be increased in size, so it will actually take up the space, so we can actually mount the pinwheel, the pin itself. Otherwise, we wouldn't have anything to actually mount this to. So we go back to our FreeCAD, and I'm going to click in the center of this pin, and I'm going to move it into position around about there, and I'm going to click on the circle. Now it doesn't look like it's in position, but I just want to attach it to the circle first. Now I can move it along the actual circumference of this circle. Make sure it's in line with the center here. Now I can do that by adding some geometry in there. So I'm going to go up to the toggles the toolbar or select geometry 2 from construction mode. So I'm going to add some construction geometry in here now. So as you can see, when I click the construction geometry, the actual geometry at the top here now is coloured in blue. So I'm going to add a line. So remember, this geometry won't get actually rendered on the actual sketch itself. Sorry, on the padding or anything like that. It's only part of the sketch for construction reasons. And I'm going to constrain the point of this line to the center here. And I'm going to do the same with this point and put it to the center of the actual pin itself. Now I've done that, you'll see that the line will stretch as it moves around the actual circumference of the actual pinwheel itself. Now I'm going to click on the line, and I'm going to constrain this along the horizontal. And now constraining this along the horizontal will actually constrain the actual pin itself to actually be in line along the horizontal and in line with this slot. And I'm just going to double click this constraint for 20mm and bring it down to 18 to give it a bit of breathing gap. So that sits now nicely inside the actual Geneva wheel. Next step we've got to do is actually increase the this circle itself, but thinking about it, we have now constrained this pin onto this circle, which I shouldn't have done. So if we look down our constraints, we can see that we've got constraint 4 is an arc constraint with a point constraint upon it, which sits here. So if I click it, and I'm just going to remove this. Now I can move this about. I'm just going to undo this, undo that last move, and I'm going to click on the line and just fix the length of that line. So now that can't move. I'm now going to click on the 200mm constraint of the actual pinwheel, and if we look quickly back at instructions, this is going to be increased in size so it just sits away from the actual center of the Geneva wheel itself. So I can either do one of two things. I can actually increase the radius here, or I can click on the radius and delete it and do this by hand, which may be the better way of doing it. So I'm just going to increase it to about halfway between the whole of the Geneva wheel and the pin itself. And then I'm going to lock that diameter in using the constrain an arc or circle constraint. It's 243, I'm going to make this 245. Now that's nicely constrained. Make the visibility of my Geneva wheel hidden. I can make the visibility of my lock wheel hidden. So now I'm just dealing with the lock wheel itself. One thing that I've missed is the actual hole in the center, so I'm going to actually fix that. Click on my circle. I'm going to add the circle for the hole, and I know all the holes in this are 20mm in radius, so the radius 20mm, and I'm going to constrain that to the center, and I believe that should be it for the lock wheel. Sorry, the pinwheel. It certainly is. So the next step is we've got construction, but we're just going to go back to our lock wheel and make sure everything on here actually allows us to pad. Now, one thing that we're going to get is this 18mm hole here. So 18mm pin here is going to end up as a hole, because I'll just place this in as a circle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace this with a guide, because when I go and pad this, there'll be two holes here. I can show you that now. So on our pinwheel, we close and hit pad. You can see that we've got two holes, which we don't want. So cancel out for that. Double click on our pinwheel again, and what we're going to do is that our Geneva Wheel just going to hide the selection. I'm going to hide the pad, and I am going to remove the 18mm wheel. I've still got the point here, so I can know where I can place it, and I'm going to swap over into construction mode and add some construction geometry on here and set the radius back to 18mm. Now I may place a little hole in here so I can actually get a screw through, so I can connect this to the correct place. So I'm going to jump out of construction mode. I could have done this before, but I've just decided now. So I'm going to make a small circle. I'm going to constrain the radius of this circle to about 4mm. There we go, so we've got a small circle there, and I am going to constrain it to that centre. So we've got a small hole that we can thread a bolt or a screw in, so we can fix this, the 18mm pin to it, and I'm just going to constrain the 18mm guide there as well, which won't appear on the pad. So close and go to our pinwheel and just pad our pinwheel and just have a look, see what it looks like. So there we go, so we've padded this, so we can see that we've got that small hole there for the bolt to put our pin on, and the hole for the actual mounting itself. And cancel out there, and I'm going to have a look at what we've got here. So we've got our lock wheel, which I'm going to make visible. So right click, toggle visibility. We've got our guide, which now I can either get rid of or I'm going to make that invisible. We've got our pinwheel and our, in here, which has already been padded, our Geneva wheel. Now we've completed the individual components, we've got a small problem. Because this is all set in one body, we're going to have a problem with padding. As you can see, I've only done one padding, I've cancelled all the others. And our lock wheel and pinwheel still need to be padded. So if I click on my pinwheel and hit pad, click OK, and then click on the lock wheel and hit pad, click OK. What I now have is a single piece of geometry that has been basically joined together. These are not separate parts. So I want to undo the padding there. I will actually create some distance between these parts now. So I'm going to move this pinwheel over to the left hand side and show you what will happen. So if I double click on the pinwheel, and you can see we've got some geometry in here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to remove this piece of construction geometry because we no longer need it, and I'm also going to select the lock wheel and hide that, and also do the same with the guide itself as well. Actually, the guide won't go away, so the guide has gone, but it's left the side that I've imported in. So now just test this. So we can't actually move this at the moment, so what we need to do is actually remove the constraints from this, is actually remove this guide here, because there's a constraint attached to this which I don't need anymore, and that will actually stop me from moving the actual pinwheel itself. So if I delete that constraint, if I delete that side there, just highlight and delete. Come on. So you can see it's highlighted there. It's not deleted for some reason. There. So now I should be able to move this, which is good. But I need to keep these two constrained. So the first thing I'm going to do is have a look at the constraint on there. So that's all nice and constrained, two circles. So I'm going to highlight, highlight the center, zoom out and highlight the center there, and add a distance constraint. That's good. So they'll keep their distance from each other now. And I'm going to stick a horizontal constraint in there as well, which I need to do on a line actually, so let's escape that. So I'm going to have to add some extra geometry in here. So I'm going to make sure my construction geometry is selected, and I'm going to add a line. And I'm going to click on the point constraint here and constrain the centers. Constrain the center, and that's constrained in the center there. And now if I press escape to get my points back, I can actually add a horizontal constraint to that line as well. So now we should be able to move this without nothing moving about, which is good. So I'm going to move this slightly off to the side, so there's space between the Geneva wheel or the Maltese cross and the lock wheel. And I'm going to now toggle visibility on the lock wheel, and also on the pinwheel as well. Toggle visibility. Seems to have shown another lock wheel for some reason there, but I believe when I close that down, there we go, that's no longer there. So now I should click on the pinwheel. I should be able to pad this, but you can see I'm getting an error coming up. That's because now I've separated the geometry out so they're not touching. So FreeCAD is now dealing with separate geometries. So if I click OK there, we get an error saying that pad result has multiple solids. This is not supported at the time. So try to create solids out of those geometries, and they weren't connected, so there'll be multiple solids there, which we do want, but it's not supported at this time. So what we need to do, if I cancel out of that, is actually separate out all of these into separate bodies. So rather than all being one body, they need to be in separate ones. So the first thing I'm going to do is rename this body, and I'm going to call this Geneva Wheel, because this will house the Geneva Wheel itself. And then I'm going to right click, make sure we're in the part designer, right click, no, let's try again, let's click on the, sorry, let's create new body and make it active. Now this looks weird because it's now zoomed right into the center point, so that's better. Right, so body one, so I'm going to make this the pinwheel. And I should be able to take the pinwheel and drop it. No, I can't. Now I should be able to, that's it, right click, move object to other body, and we'll move it to the pinwheel. And we'll do the same with the lock wheel. So we'll come up to the top, click the create a new body and make it active, zoom out, and this one is going to be the lock wheel, so we'll rename this to lock wheel. And if we open up our Geneva Wheel, should find a lock wheel in there somewhere. There it is. And then right click on the lock wheel, move object to other body, and select the lock wheel. So they're all in individual wheels at the moment. Sorry, individual bodies at the moment. So that's all good. Now what I want to do is bring this, I want to place them together so we can see what they look when they're constructed. And to do that I need to move this back to the center here of this lock wheel. So move the pinwheel, so we double click the pinwheel and make sure everything else is visible, and we're going to go to sketch. No, we're not. First of all I'm going to select the center of the pinwheel, and then we're going to go to sketch, and we're going to go to sketch tools, and go to move. It says the copy requires at least one selected non-external geometry element. So that's not going to work, so I've got to actually select this geometry. Sure that outside is selected, and now go to sketch, sketcher tools, and move. Now I can move it over here, so I'm going to zoom into here, and unfortunately I can't see the center of here, so I'm going to go about rough center there. So let's move that. Oh, that's almost exact. Look at that. We just final adjustments in there. This is actually where I need the guide. So let's show this guide, toggle visibility. And just place that over the top of that guide there. I could import this edge back in and anchor it there, but I don't really want to. So that'll do for the time being. So now all is good. So now we've got the Geneva wheel with nothing in it. What's going on there? Oh, this pad has moved outside of the Geneva wheel. Let's move that back in. Should be able to drag and drop it. That's the Geneva wheel. That's better. So that's all good. So we've got our close the sketch. So we've got all those in position. Let's hide the guide again. Go down to here, down to the model, visibility, false. So let's click on the lock wheel and hit pad. Now there'll be a problem here when I hit pad. It comes up reference. Select geometries which are not part of the active body. Please define how to handle those selections. So what it's telling you is that you've tried to pad something but you haven't made that body active. If I cancel out of here, you can see which body is active at the moment, which is the pinwheel. So what I need to do is go over to the lock wheel and actually make this active. So I'll right click and toggle active body. Our lock wheel is now active, so our pinwheel has been deactivated. Our lock wheel is now active. So now we can actually pad this, and I'm going to give that 30 millimeters. And now I'm going to go to the pinwheel. I'm going to do the same. I'm going to right click, toggle active body, so it's now active. And then I'm going to go up to the pad, selected sketch, and I'm going to make this, oh, they're 20 millimeters. Oops. There we go. So at the moment, looking at our screen, we can see that our Geneva wheel is supposed to sit on top of the actual lock wheel itself.